Hey guys, my name is Donald Spann, and good to be back. It's been almost a year since I've done really an informative video on the topic of call centers. And for those of you that don't already know me, hi, my name is Donald Spann, and I created a company called Vicky Virtual Receptionist, built it to over 1,000 clients, and got acquired in 2019. And today I have a course on how to start a similar call center with a similar business model. But today I'd like to talk about AI. I get over the years, I've gotten all kinds of like DM, like on Twitter, X, Reddit, YouTube, email about AI. What are we going to do in terms of AI in call center? Is it going to take over the industry? Should I be running an AI call center right now? What can I do? And I'm going to do this is a long video, and I'd like to do more of a deep dive into the topic. I've had it come up in like live calls that I've done in the past, and I'll usually give a quick answer. And my answer in that regard is still arguably the same, and that is AI agents are nowhere near what a human agent is on the phone. And I think we've got probably over a decade until we're even close. And so in the interim, I think especially in this business model, it's absolutely paramount that we are utilizing human agents to the best of our ability to serve our clients. And we believe frankly, I know that will give you the best experience for your caller, for people that are interacting with these people on behalf of your client. So, with that said, there have been significant changes, there have been significant progress. There have been a lot of people with AI startups, right? There's a tremendous amount of money being poured into the industry lately. And so even in the last week, I've had people sort of reach out to me on LinkedIn, like, hey, I've got an AI startup. I know that you have experience in this industry. We'd love to know your feedback and thoughts about our AI tool that will revolutionize how call centers are operating. So I've been checking them out. Of course, it's always important for us to stay really informed and sort of cutting edge about this. And again, the reality is that they're not there yet, but there have been some serious improvements. And so in that regard, I'm going to talk about 5 pros and 5 cons of having either a full-on AI call center or potentially integrating AI into your new or existing call center operations. So going into it, I've got this thing behind me. 5 benefits of AI agents. The first is that it's cheap. The reality is that digital labor is forever going to be significantly less expensive than human labor, right? The biggest reason for that is that we have human agents versus computing power, right? We're not dealing with human agents. We're dealing with a certain amount of computing power that outputs, the typical output of a human full-time work over the course of a month, right? And frankly, it costs a lot less money to utilize that computing power than it does to pay the salary of an agent even outside of the US. And so, if you're trying to put something together, it is more economical to utilize sort of AI resources or AI computing power or an AI agent in order to get the job done. So that's a pro. Number 2 is 24/7, 365 availability. It's an obvious benefit that computers do not care about Christmas. That's coming up for me in 6 days in the US here. They don't care about sick days, holidays. They don't feel overworked, right? Unless the servers heat up too much. But you're just not going to worry about that. Nothing calling in sick. You don't have to have considerations or, really think about any of that. And so, frankly, that's convenient, right? You can offer that full-time 365, 366 day on a leap year availability to your customers when you're using AI agents. I think that's pretty obvious. So number three is they don't need to be managed. They only need to be edited. So what I mean by that is, I'm going to start to dive in now. When you are configuring what is to be your AI agent, or really your team of AI resources, right? You're not talking about a human. So you might have really probably a set of scripts or phrases or, essentially ways to answer certain questions or inquiries that are coming in, right? And this applies to voice as well, by the way. And a good AI, like there's one that I'll mention in the sort of description here, is one that can not only perfectly sort of recite or respond in the way that you tell it to using the script that's been pre-created. It can also go outside the lines a little bit. They work on what's called LLMs or language learning models, which over time allows that sort of computational resource agent to take in more input and start to really adjust the output to a certain extent and be more accurate and a little bit better as it gets and retains more information and gets feedback. And so what I mean by editing is, you have an initial script that you start off with and you feed it into the program. And say a call comes in and say the conversation doesn't go well. Well, of course, you as a human can listen to it and change the script so that it makes a bit more sense next time. And you can continue to edit that, right? You can edit it. And frankly, when it comes to humans, right, that's what training is. You'll have human, and anyone that's ever employed a human in any industry knows that humans make mistakes left and right. AI doesn't. It can be a mistake in the script. It can be a mistake in the resources. It can be a mistake in the underlying data. But the sort of usage of that data that's on hand for that AI agent will never be repeated back to the person incorrectly, right? They just don't make mistakes. And so when you're editing, you don't have to train. You don't have to deal with, human that may or may not listen to your training. You make the edit, and that is going to be reflected in ongoing future responses from that AI agent. So something to keep in mind is an absolute benefit. Number four, scale. I also think it's pretty obvious that, again, these aren't humans. And so when people say AI agents, it's just not the same as, human or person to person, right? The service that I'm going to mention at the bottom here has a very powerful statement on their site that says, the header says, a team of 100,000 agents at the click of a button, right? Because it's just computational power. It can scale up or down within seconds depending on what your needs are, depending on the volume coming in and out of your call center, right? And so, if you have the equivalent of 5 agents today and 10 agents tomorrow, you're just using slightly more or less computing power. And if you're willing to pay for whatever your service you're using, if you're paying for that, then it will scale with you just like a computer would, except this is a network of computers on huge servers that have huge needs. So it's nice. You can scale and not even have to think about it. So the fifth thing is that there's multilingual support. When you have a human agent, and frankly, most of the world is multilingual. I think it's 72%, where most people in the U.S. are not, right? I just speak English. I'm trying to learn some Spanish. But an AI agent, if you're using, a certain program that's trained in certain languages, which is of course expanding all the time, and you feed it, scripts in different languages, it's able to interact in multiple languages, and it doesn't cost any more money. So it's a fantastic thing to be able to use. You're not limited to just the one language. You can use it in other languages, and instead of paying all kinds of extra benefits and higher salary and stuff as a result of that, it's built in. right? So I would say those are five almost obvious but serious benefits in terms of having an AI agent. Now, I'd like to go into the cons here because I want to be a bit of a devil's advocate in terms of people that are outside of the industry, especially those on the tech side that are supremely confident about what's happening in AI, right? Now, I'm not a software developer, and so I'm only going to understand a fraction of what some of you out there understand in terms of what's coming in terms of AI. But what I'm seeing right now in the market, and from what I've been seeing in terms of feedback I've been giving on platform, new services that are currently being developed, just not there. And I'll say why. Number one is that AI agents still have a NAAR scope. Again, I said they can't be managed, they can be edited, right? And frankly, you've got LLMs, and I'm going to butcher this, but language learning models will learn and sort of take in input, receive feedback, and improve their output based off of that feedback, right? It's like an iterative process. It continues to happen over and over again. And humans, frankly, sort of do the same thing, right? I'm trying to learn Spanish. I'll hear the same verb over and over again, and eventually it'll stick in my brain. And as I try to say a sentence, I'll get feedback from my tutor. Oh, that's incorrect. Oh, you should say it this way. Oh, this sounds more natural, right? There's certain things that I can't get out of a book that I need that input from the tutor to get me on the correct path. What's the way that people actually say it in this particular country or in real life, right? And so that's an iterative process. But what humans can do that right now regular computers can't, and maybe quantum computers can, humans right now we have the advantage of thinking more of what a quantum computer is like. We can think simultaneously about multiple things at the same time concerning a single point. Now, computers, even when they run, unless they're running multiple processors, multiple cores at the same time, technically every single operation, and it's happening in the tiniest of time, like nanoseconds or billionths of a second, it's one step at a time. They can only think of one thing at a time. And so it's always a sequence of steps. And so when you have things like you need a sequence of steps, well, you don't have intuition. And so when there's no intuition, you're not able to take in those other input outside of, oh, this is the one thing I've been given, and there's certain variables to consider, but I'm responding directly to this one thing. That's what a computer does, right? And this sort of leads me into point two, which is there's no lack of emotion. There's lack of emotion, there's no nuance, right? So two callers in a row could ask the exact same question. Hey, what are your struggles? And if you say it normally and you say it correctly, right, and the AI computer agent can understand what you're saying, they'll say, hey, thanks for asking. And they'll have like sort of a humanoid voice. They'll say, thanks for asking. Our hours are Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., Saturday, blah, 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 Sunday, blah, blah, blah. It just, can I answer any other question for you, right? And it sounds sort of humanoid. And for the person that's just doing a regular call, that's completely sufficient. If someone's irate and they call in, they say, what are your hours? And they're just upset. Your AI agent cannot understand that. It won't detect the irateness. But like a decent call center human employee, let alone a good one, will catch that irateness. And they'll say, hey, I'm sorry. There'll be some type of thing along with that answer. Oh yeah, we closed today at 7 p.m. Was there something you needed? Sort of trying to dig a little bit deeper to see if there's something beyond that initial surface level question that caller needs to be answered, right? And so when you're thinking about building this type of business, and I want to give a lot of context here as to why these things are important. When you're thinking about building some type of business in general, even outside of call center, you think to yourself, okay, what's a mediocre business versus a good versus a great business, right? In the context of call centers, in the context of our business model, what is a mediocre call center? Well, you just have bodies that are just there to answer the simplest questions. They're not helpful. They have no empathy or concern, and they just move on to the next interaction as quickly as possible. Our premise in the virtual receptionist niche is, hey, we're trying to replace that in-house receptionist that, the existing customers of this small SMB love and have sort of a rapport with, a camaraderie with, and that's the thing that makes them want to continue going back to the business. And so if you have agents that lack emotion, lack empathy, lack the ability to discern what's really wrong, then you go from having a question answered to not having someone come back because the other things outside of the surface level question were not addressed. Okay? So that's where, when we sort of come at things specifically only from a technical standpoint, from the outside looking in, you don't notice these things, right? It's like that scene, I'm gonna keep going. It's like that scene in Good Will Hunting that I just saw again the other day. Listen, you can probably quote anything psychologically in a book, but have you ever been to the Sistine Chapel and gotten a sense of what it smells like in there? Have you looked up at the ceiling and seen what Michelangelo painted? Until you experience that, how can you really feel an emotional attachment to it? And so that's what I mean. Okay, 3, lost in translation. So I mentioned before as a positive that AI agents can handle multiple languages. However, if you've ever used a transcription service, and then you listen to someone like me, like I'm born in Chicago, born and raised in Chicago. My parents are born and raised in Chicago, and yet I talk a certain way because I have a hearing loss since birth. I was born 10 weeks early, and so I speak things a certain way. I'm slightly off. And so even like if I'm not sure if I'm gonna run captions on this video because it's long, but say I run captions on this video. What I do is I run it through a program. My favorite is called Auto.ai, and it will get about, let's say a 20-30 minute video. I don't even know how many, like 15,000 words or something. And it will get about 30% of those words wrong, right? And so I have to go through and then correct them. And frankly, like of that 30%, maybe 50% are just slightly off. The other 15%, it's like I'm speaking on a different planet, right? And so what happens is your AI agent will get things wrong. They will transcribe their sort of voice input. They'll get it wrong sometime, and they won't know what they're answering, right? And then your person's gonna be like, what are you even talking about? Now, in human, the worst human agent, if they don't understand something that's being said, they will say, hey, I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Or maybe they will get what the person's trying to say, even if they missed a word or two, and they will respond appropriately. Right? So you're missing out on that, especially if there's an accent. That type of thing can really be exacerbated. And, it's just a huge disadvantage. So the fourth thing is that I would say is a negative is that you got limited functionality. Right? I talked about NAAR Scope, but the other thing is that because this is essentially a computer and computational power, it needs to have some type of servers or resource that are the foundational infrastructure for that AI agent that is talking and interacting with customers. And so what does that mean? Well, different services have different, quality of, infrastructure, right? So if one is using let's say Bard or one is using ChatGPT, there's going to be differences. And so some of them have limitations that others don't. Now, of course, this type of thing applies to humans too, but the difference is that human can be trained if they have enough capability, particularly in the call center space, right? Where there's going to be some AI agents that are legitimately limited by their, sort of infrastructure that they're sitting on top of. There's going to be things that even theoretically they just can't do because the computers that they run on and the servers that they function on or whatever, I can't really give a good example right now, but you're literally limited by the technology. With humans, you're limited by, maybe an individual agent in terms of the amount of passion or motivation they have toward the job. And, every now and then you run into someone that doesn't seem to be getting it in terms of doing the job right. But the fortunate thing is that you can just hire a different human at any point, right? If you replace an AI, you're replacing everything. You're not going to have one AI agent from one system and then another AI agent from another system. That's not how it works. And so, how do you start from scratch when you run into a problem that your system, as a limitation, is preventing you from being able to solve? That's a big deal and something that shouldn't be taken lightly, right? And then you've got the last thing, which is Uncanny Valley, right? And I'm going to explain this as best as I can. I'm not a behavioral psychologist, but the reality is that humans have a mechanism as part of our instinct, our primal survival sort of genetic that have been one of the many things that have enabled us, like many animals, to evolve and survive through millennia, right? And that is the sort of innate, sort of subconscious ability to detect things that are slightly off. And what that means is that even though logically, if you see those little robots with like the weird faces, they're doing that, and you see them, they try to make them look humanoid, but they're very clearly not. And you can also hear that in terms of voices, right? In AI agents, you'll hear oh, that is very cool to hear. That is nice. You'll hear it, but you'll notice that there's something off. And so logically, it's like, okay, fine, it's an AI, not a big deal. But subconsciously, your body is, awakening its defense mechanisms, right? Uncanny Valley come from humans' ability, like many other animals, to detect those things that are slightly off, like, something rustling around in a dense forest. It's like, oh man, this might be a danger. Or someone like holding a knife behind their back and they're acting normal, sort of, but a little bit weird. So you get into a bit of a sort of defensive stance to, sort of proactively protect yourself against potential danger. And so that feeling is going to be there whenever you encounter Uncanny Valley. And so you'll hear a lot of commenters on the robot videos that are like, man, that's so weird, I can't even take it, it makes my skin crawl. And so frankly, if you encounter Uncanny Valley with your AI agent, you're going to be having an agent that is answering things correctly, getting the script right, and making your callers feel uneasy, right? That's not the sort of thing that you want to convey and portray when you're running this type of thing. And so until we somehow get past that, which again, I think that's truly going to be more than a decade, you can't really use AI agents. Now, with all of those things said, a hybrid model can be awesome, right? I think in the context of the virtual receptionist category, we're mostly focused on calls. Again, our focus is sort of replacing or augmenting an in-house, in-office receptionist. The receptionist level of quality is much higher than some Fortune 500 billing department or a collections department at some shady company that might be trying to screw you over for a debt that you may or may not owe, or a telemarketing agency that's already robo-dialing and sending out pre-recorded messages and hoping that you press one to speak to an agent. Right? When it comes to those types of things, the bar is a lot lower. When it comes to our niche, the bar is higher. And frankly, that's a good thing. Our competition is a traditional answering service. A traditional answering service is human bodies that are, answering things correctly, but they don't have a lot of empathy. They're not going above and beyond at all to help the people that they're interacting with, your client. And so with our model, with our niche, with what we're trying to achieve, we're literally trying to give the gift of emotional empathy, of understanding the nuances, of sort of going that extra mile to create a wow experience for the people that our agents are interacting with. And in that context, it enables a call center or a service to go from mediocre to good to hopefully even great. And so in the context of voice, an AI agent absolutely cannot approach something resembling that. But in the context of live chat, in terms of email responses, you could have literally perfect responses, and sometimes it can sort of infer tone based off of the type of words that are being used in an email, right? It can't tell from tone of voice, but it can, sort of discern what the tone is from the wording of an email or the wording of a live chat. But either way, what you can do is be extremely efficient by having humans on the phone. Maybe if you're insane, having a voice AI person answering like a very strict set of Q&A that are coming up very often in certain context. Or, even in the cases of, AI agents responding to non-voice inquiries, you have a human looking over those responses before the responses are submitted. In that case, they don't have to type them. They don't have to do anything except read and press submit or make a small edit before pressing submit and making sure that those things are done properly. And so in that regard, if your agents are augmenting AI agents outside of the voice contact to get more work done, then that agent has more bandwidth. And with more bandwidth, you can generate more revenue per agent or have sort of more things handled by an agent, making them less expensive to the company that you're serving. And so if you're more efficient, you can literally have agents that are making the same amount of money. They're doing more, they're still happy, but you're able to charge less and be ahead of your competition for that reason. So a hybrid AI call center is possible. I'm not even doing it yet. There are some contexts in which certain software out there are starting to integrate AI technology, including the software that I now recommend now, which is called RingCentral RingCX. I think that in the near future is where we're headed, right? A hybrid model. In terms of fully replacing the human workforce, which will be pretty catastrophic, I think, honestly, because it's already a $300 billion industry, probably rising to $750 billion worldwide by 2030. That's a lot of jobs lost, but thankfully I don't think those jobs are really in danger yet. With that said, I hope this video was valuable for you. If you're interested, make sure you check out my course where I dive into the virtues and everything A to Z on a virtual receptionist business, or just check out more videos on my channel for more. I'm going to be putting out more content over the next few weeks and months, so stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribed and click on that bell to get notifications every time I post. With that said, thanks so much and have a good end of 2023.